The temperature in the ivory room dropped 10 degrees as my sister's words registered across the candlelit table. I'm pregnant with Liam's baby. Victoria's hand rested on her barely visible bump, while my husband stood beside her, his fingers curled possessively around her shoulder. The weight of my birthday cake knife suddenly felt unbearable in my hand. "We're a family now," Victoria added, her voice dripping with false sympathy as she watched for the tears, the breakdown, the scene I was supposed to create. Instead, I set the knife down with precision. The soft clink against fine china echoed in the stunned silence. I raised my untouched champagne flute, meeting Victoria's triumphant gaze with unwavering calm. The momentary flicker of confusion in her eyes was worth every second of the performance I was about to give. "My name is Olivia. I'm 32, and this is the story of how I turned their perfect betrayal into the blueprint for their destruction." Growing up, I was always the responsible one. Victoria was our parents' golden child. When she needed a designer dress for prom, they liquidated investments. When I needed textbooks for college honors courses, I received lectures about fiscal responsibility. They mistook my stability for weakness, my reliability for a lack of ambition. That was their first miscalculation. The foundation of my world crumbled exactly 6 weeks before that birthday dinner. I was alone at home, using our shared family tablet to look up a recipe for Liam's favorite anniversary dinner. The notification appeared without warning, an email from Victoria to Liam, subject line, "Our plan." My fingers hovered over the screen, my lungs refusing to fill. Some primitive part of my brain recognized the precipice before me, knowing that once I touched that screen, nothing would remain the same. I tapped it anyway. The email unfurled like a poisonous bloom. The affair was detailed in nauseating clarity, but it was the final paragraph that hollowed me out completely. A meticulous scheme to announce the pregnancy at my birthday celebration, using public humiliation to force me into a silent, uncontested divorce, where they would take everything because she'll be too broken to fight back. She never fights back. Mitap. The tablet slipped from my hands, the screen shattering against the kitchen tile in a perfect mirror of what was happening inside my chest. I backed against the refrigerator, sliding down until I sat on the cold floor. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I simply opened my mouth in a silent, primal expression of grief as the life I thought I had disintegrated before me. That single moment of devastation was all I permitted myself. One silent scream, and then something crystallized within me, my pain calcifying into something colder and sharper. It transformed into rage. With trembling fingers, I called my closest friend, Rachel. "It's happened," I said, my voice unnaturally steady. "Olivia? Where are you? Are you okay?" Her concern radiated through the phone. "At home, but I'm not going to cry. I'm going to burn their entire world to the ground." As I spoke those words, connections I hadn't previously made began forming in my mind. The affair wasn't the disease. It was merely a symptom. The true sickness was the lies, and the most vicious deception had begun over a year ago. We'd been trying for a baby for 3 years. It was my deepest desire, the future I'd planned meticulously. After countless negative tests and heartbreak, Liam finally agreed to get tested at Westlake Fertility Clinic. He went alone. That evening, he returned with an Oscar-worthy performance. He held me while I sobbed, stroking my hair, his voice breaking with fabricated compassion. "It's not me, Liv," he'd whispered. "The doctor says I'm perfectly fine. It must be you." He allowed me to carry that crushing burden for an entire year, to believe I was fundamentally broken. That level of cruelty now seemed unfathomable. "Rachel," I said after a moment of silence, "I need to get the real medical results from Westlake Clinic from last year." "Those are protected by HIPAA regulations," she replied cautiously. Rachel worked as a paralegal and understood the legal barriers. "It's virtually impossible without—" "I'm his wife," I interrupted, my voice hardening. "There has to be a way." There was. 2 weeks of persistent phone calls, consent forms I found in Liam's home office filing cabinet that he'd signed but never submitted, and some creative conversation with administrative staff produced results. An email appeared in my inbox with a PDF attachment. My hand shook violently as I clicked to open it. I scrolled past the medical terminology to the conclusion at the bottom. Patient exhibits zero sperm motility. Diagnosis, azoospermia, sterile. The word hung before me, suspended in digital space. He wasn't merely unfaithful, he was pathologically deceitful. The lie was so comprehensive, so absolute, that it made me question everything else. If he could fabricate this, what other falsehoods had I accepted as truth? My thoughts returned to the day he'd supposedly paid for those expensive fertility tests. It costs thousands, Liv, he'd explained. Specialist consultations aren't covered by insurance. I logged into our online banking portal where I had full access to our joint accounts. I pulled up our bank statements from that period. There was no payment to Westlake Clinic, not a single dollar, but there was a cash withdrawal, a substantial one, $20,000. Something cold settled in my stomach. This wasn't just about an affair anymore. The following day, I withdrew $5,000 from my personal savings account and drove to the office of a private investigator, a reserved, middle-aged man who resembled a university professor more than a detective. I'd found him through a recommendation from one of Rachel's law firm colleagues. I don't care if he's cheating, I explained, sliding a folder across his desk. I already know he is. I need you to follow the money, find where that $20,000 went, and any other financial discrepancies. 2 weeks later, he called me to his office and delivered his findings. The reality was far worse than I had imagined. The investigator had traced the money to a shell account Liam had established. From there, a steady stream of payments flowed to Victoria, covering her luxury apartment, her car payments, her designer wardrobe. But the final discovery was devastating. A single transfer of $200,000 from Liam's corporate expense account, embezzled funds sent to a title company. It was the down payment for a house now registered in my mother's name. This wasn't a betrayal, it was a conspiracy. My husband, my sister, and my mother had conspired against me, and in my purse I now held the 2 documents that would dismantle their carefully constructed plans: Liam's medical report and the investigator's financial findings. The investigator had also discovered something else. Texts between Victoria and her ex-boyfriend Thomas from 6 months ago, discussing their relationship and how it had ended when she met someone new. The timeline aligned perfectly with when she'd begun seeing Liam. If Victoria was truly 5 months pregnant, as she claimed, Thomas was the only possible father. 6 weeks after discovering their betrayal, I arrived at the Ivory Room for my birthday dinner, armed with the truth. Rachel was already aware of my plan. I'd asked her to meet me at the restaurant at 9 p.m., timing her arrival for the aftermath of what I knew would be a confrontation. Which brings us back to that birthday dinner and the silence that followed Victoria's announcement. I stood, maintaining my grip on the champagne flute. "To family," I said, my voice carrying with unexpected clarity, "and to truth." I reached into my purse and removed a single folded document, sliding it across the polished mahogany table toward Liam. He stared at it, confusion clouding his features. "What is this?" he asked, wariness creeping into his voice. "That," I replied, ensuring my volume was sufficient for everyone at the table to hear, "is the truth from Westlake Clinic, from last year." I watched as recognition dawned and color drained from his face. He knew immediately. Victoria glanced between us, her triumphant expression faltering. "The greatest lie wasn't you sleeping with my sister, Liam," I continued, my tone glacial. "It was you ever pretending you could be a father." A collective gasp rippled through the room. Victoria's previously radiant face contorted with horror as understanding crashed over her. Her eyes darted to Liam, then down to her own stomach, the implications becoming brutally clear. Liam began stammering incoherently. You can't," but I wasn't finished. I shifted my attention to my mother, who stared at me with undisguised shock. "And Mom," I said, my voice softening dangerously, "that house is beautiful, but when Liam's company completes their fraud investigation into the missing $200,000, they're going to want it back." Chaos erupted. Liam lunged across the table, his face twisted with panic and fury. "You liar!" he shouted, spittle flying. Restaurant security materialized instantly. Two imposing men restrained him as he thrashed and cursed, a fittingly catastrophic conclusion to our marriage. Amid the pandemonium, as my mother dissolved into sobs and Victoria remained frozen in shock, I calmly collected my purse. Right on schedule, Rachel appeared at my side, her protective hand on my back, having arrived just as planned. We began walking toward the exit. Victoria, suddenly animated, grabbed my wrist with desperate intensity. "Olivia, please," she pleaded, her voice breaking. I looked down at her fingers clutching my arm, then back into her terrified eyes. I gently extricated myself from her grasp. My final words to her weren't angry, they were simply final. "I'd save your please," I said evenly, "and I'd call Thomas. He deserves to know he's going to be a father." Then I turned and walked out of the restaurant with Rachel. The heavy oak door closed behind us, muffling the sounds of the life I was leaving behind. For the first time in months, I could breathe freely. The subsequent 6 months passed in a blur of legal proceedings and paperwork, but it was a cleansing fire. The divorce was contentious at first, with Liam denying everything. But once his company's investigation confirmed the embezzlement, he quickly agreed to my terms. My mother was forced to sell the house to repay the embezzled funds, and Victoria, after a paternity test confirmed Thomas was the father, had moved back to our hometown to raise the baby with him. Today, 6 months after that restaurant confrontation, I'm in a ceramics studio in a different neighborhood, my hands covered in wet clay, experiencing genuine laughter. Rachel is beside me, struggling comically to center her clay on the wheel. "So the divorce is officially final?" she asks, flicking a small bit of clay in my direction. "As of Tuesday," I confirm with a smile, "his company settled generously. Turns out they strongly prefer to keep their financial improprieties out of public court records." My phone vibrates on the nearby table. I wipe my hands and check the screen. It's a news alert from a local station. Former finance executive Liam Williams sentenced to 5 years for embezzlement. A grainy image shows him being escorted away in handcuffs. I study the photo for a prolonged moment and realize I feel nothing. No satisfaction, no vindication, not even anger. Just quiet. He's a chapter in a book I've already finished reading. I place the phone face down and return to my pottery wheel. "Now," I say to Rachel, restarting the wheel, "where were we?" My new apartment has a small balcony overlooking the lake. On it sits a single orchid I rescued from the clearance section at a garden center. It was damaged, its flowers gone, but I recognize the vitality still present within it. I've been nurturing it back to health. This morning, I noticed a new bud forming. For too long, I believed I was the broken one, the one incapable of growth. But I wasn't broken. I was simply planted in the wrong garden. The sharp crack of my daughter's birthday cake hitting the floor echoed through the suddenly silent room. My 2-year-old Lucy's face crumpled as she stared at her ruined princess cake. Pink frosting splattered across the hardwood. Above her, my mother-in-law Fiona loomed, her face contorted with rage. "Disgusting, spoiled brat," she hissed, jabbing her finger inches from Lucy's face. "This is exactly why I can't stand children like you." My vision tunneled, the edges darkening as a wave of heat surged from my stomach to my throat. The champagne flute I'd been holding slipped from my fingers, shattering against the floor in perfect synchronization with something breaking inside me. The room seemed to tilt as I watched tears stream down my daughter's cheeks, her tiny body trembling in fear. Every maternal instinct ignited at once. I lunged forward, sweeping Lucy into my arms in one fluid motion, feeling her little heart pounding against mine. My free hand shot out, creating a physical barrier between my child and this woman who dared terrorize her. "She's 2 years old," I snarled, my voice barely recognizable even to myself. Across the room, my husband Parker stood frozen, his eyes darting between us with the panicked indecision of someone watching 2 trains about to collide. Fiona's mouth twisted into a cruel smile. "Worst grandchild ever," she spat, as though a toddler could possibly deserve such venom. "No wonder, with you as her mother." "My name is Olivia. I'm 33 and an executive assistant. This is the story of how I reclaim my power after discovering the strongest family ties are the ones you choose to keep. Parker and I had met at a charity gala 4 years earlier. We dated for a year before getting married, and Lucy came along just 9 months after our wedding. He was charming, attentive, and seemed refreshingly independent for someone in his 30s. When Lucy was born, he became the hands-on father I'd always dreamed of having for my children. He changed diapers without complaint, took night feedings, and even insisted I sleep in on weekends. What I didn't realize was that his apparent independence was simply the temporary absence of the woman who'd controlled his entire life, his mother. The first warning signs appeared during our engagement. Whenever we discussed wedding plans, Parker would hesitate before responding. "I should probably run this by my mom," he'd say about everything from our venue to our honeymoon destination. I mistook this for respectful family involvement rather than the red flag it was. After Lucy's birth, the calls from Fiona increased. Every decision I made was scrutinized, questioned, then dismissed. "Breastfeeding? For how long? That seems excessive," she'd comment during our weekly video calls. Or, "She's sleeping in your room. That'll ruin your marriage faster than your cooking." I brushed off these remarks, attributing them to generational differences and outdated parenting philosophies. I didn't want to cause tension between Parker and his mother. That was my first mistake. 6 months ago, Parker came home with an expression I'd never seen before, a mixture of anxiety and forced enthusiasm. "Mom's moving in with us," he announced without preamble, staring at a point just past my shoulder. I nearly dropped the plate I was drying. "What? Why?" "Dad left her for his dental hygienist," he explained, his voice brittle. "She's devastated. Needs family support. And think about it. She can help with Lucy while you go back to work full-time." The practical benefits seemed compelling, and Parker assured me his mother thought highly of me. "She says you're the daughter she never had," he insisted, though I'd never heard her express anything remotely that affectionate. Within weeks, Fiona arrived with 7 suitcases and a seemingly permanent scowl. The moment Parker left for work that first morning, her demeanor transformed completely. She surveyed our living room with undisguised contempt. "This furniture is quite aspirational for someone at your level," she remarked, running a finger along our coffee table. "Excuse me," I said, nearly choking on my coffee. "Everything you have is because of my son," she said, voice suddenly sharp as a razor. "Don't ever forget that." I took a deep breath, reminding myself of her recent divorce. "We both work hard for what we have," I replied evenly. "At least you know your place," she said with a smirk. "That's something." From that moment forward, nothing I did was acceptable. My cooking was either bland or trying too hard. My parenting was constantly undermined. "Lucy needs a sweater. Are you trying to make her sick?" Even my personal habits were criticized. "Who showers at night? No wonder you always look so disheveled." Meanwhile, Parker transformed in his mother's presence. My confident, reasonable husband became an anxious, approval-seeking child. "How's my special boy?" She'd coo at dinner, ignoring me completely. "Work was rough," he'd sigh. "The client rejected our initial proposal." "That's discrimination," she'd gasp dramatically. "Should I call your CEO? I play bridge with his wife." "Mom, please, it's just business," he'd mumble. "My precious son is too humble," she'd announce, clutching his arm like he'd invented gravity. To preserve my sanity, I enrolled Lucy in daycare 3 days a week and increased my hours at work. When I informed Fiona of this decision, she exploded. "Why are you abandoning your child? Don't I deserve some peace after everything I've been through?" "You'll have the house to yourself 3 days a week," I pointed out, maintaining a calm I didn't feel. "Fine," she huffed, "but this place better be spotless when I wake up." Which brings us back to Lucy's birthday party. As I held my sobbing daughter, something crystallized within me. The months of belittlement, the undermining of my authority, the transformation of my husband into a passive bystander in our marriage, it all converged into perfect clarity. You will never speak to my daughter that way again, I said, my voice deadly quiet. Fiona's eyes widened in momentary shock before narrowing with contempt. This is my son's house. I'll speak however I want. I turned to Parker, silently pleading for support. Finally, he stepped forward, and for one beautiful moment, I thought he was going to defend us. Instead, he placed his hand on his mother's shoulder. Mom's right, he said softly. You're overreacting. Lucy did knock over the cake. I stared at him, something inside me shattering at this final betrayal. She's a baby, Parker. Your baby. He shrugged, a gesture so dismissive it felt like a physical blow. We can have another kid. I only have one mother. The room went silent. In that moment, I saw with perfect clarity what the rest of my life would look like if I stayed. Endless subjugation to a woman who despised me and a husband who would always, always choose her. Get out, Fiona suddenly demanded, pointing toward the door. Both of you, now. I blinked, momentarily confused, then understanding dawned with sickening clarity. This house, my house, she already considered it hers. Actually, I said, my voice suddenly steady, I think you two should leave. Parker looked stunned. What are you talking about? Where would we go? Not my problem, I replied, surprised by how calm I felt. But you have 30 minutes to pack essentials. The rest we can arrange later. Fiona laughed, a harsh, brittle sound. You can't kick us out of Parker's house? I smiled then, feeling an odd sense of peace wash over me. That's where you're wrong, Fiona. This isn't Parker's house. Parker's face paled. What do you mean? I bought this house with my inheritance before we met, I explained, watching comprehension slowly dawn on his face. Remember when I insisted we keep our finances separate? There was a reason for that. You're lying, Fiona spat, but uncertainty had crept into her voice. I walked to my office, returned with a folder, and placed the property deed on the counter. 30 minutes, I repeated, and then I'm calling the police to remove trespassers. They left in 27 minutes, Fiona screeching about ingratitude, while Parker silently loaded their suitcases into his car. As they drove away, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months, the ability to breathe freely in my own home. 3 days later, I sat in my lawyer's office, ignoring the dozens of missed calls lighting up my phone. The preliminary divorce papers lay before me, terms carefully outlined to protect Lucy and my assets. When Parker finally reached me, he sounded desperate rather than angry. We need to talk about living arrangements, he began, his voice unnaturally high. Mom and I are in a hotel, and it's not sustainable. I agree, I said pleasantly, so I've prepared a rental agreement for the house. What? He sputtered. I'm your husband. Soon-to-be ex-husband, I corrected. Market rate for a house this size is $3,200 monthly. For you, I'll make it $3,500. That's extortion, he shouted. No, that's capitalism, I replied, and there's a strict no Fiona clause in the agreement. Where is she supposed to live? He demanded, his voice cracking. Not my problem, I said, echoing his dismissive shrug from the party. But I hear the dental hygienist has a lovely spare room. I hung up, feeling a satisfaction so intense it bordered on euphoric. My lawyer later told me that Parker showed up to our first mediation session with deep shadows under his eyes and a nervous tic in his left cheek. Apparently, hotel living with his mother had fractured their unbreakable bond in record time. She'd begun criticizing his income, his career choices, even his breathing patterns. My lawyer had watched their interactions in the waiting room and filled me in after our session. During our final settlement conference, I watched through the conference room window as they argued in the hallway, repeatedly hissing, "This is all your fault," at each other like actors in a particularly melodramatic play. Meanwhile, I rented out the house for a substantial monthly income, secured Lucy's future with a robust college fund, and moved into a charming condo closer to my parents. Now I work 4 days a week, spend quality time with my daughter, and sleep peacefully without midnight criticisms or the weight of constant disapproval. 6 months after that fateful birthday party, the divorce was finalized. I received full custody of Lucy, with Parker getting supervised visitation twice a month, a schedule he rarely manages to keep as his mother usually needs him on those weekends. The court recognized his pattern of prioritizing his mother over his child's well-being, which worked in my favor during custody negotiations. As for love, maybe someday. But first, I'm focusing on the most important relationship in my life, the one with my daughter. And I've made a solemn promise that I'll never allow anyone to make either of us feel small again. Before you go, here's a quick bonus for sticking around. If you love learning and growing like I do, you need to try audiobooks. I've got an exclusive deal with Audible. Your first month is completely free. That's access to over 500,000 titles, zero cost to you. All the details are waiting in the description. Don't miss this one. The attorney's business card slid across the hospital table toward me, its gold-embossed lettering catching the fluorescent light. My husband Owen's fingers still rested on its edge, his wedding ring glinting. It was the same ring I'd placed there 22 years ago. Divorcing a wife who doesn't work? $1,000 a month alimony sounds fair. Take care, Laura. Owen chuckled, standing beside my hospital bed without having once asked how I was feeling. Beside him, Vanessa wrapped her arm around his waist, wearing the same smug expression I'd seen countless times during our childhood together. Fine, let's divorce then, I replied so casually that Owen's smile faltered for a moment before he exchanged a triumphant glance with Vanessa. Good thing Owen isn't much of a thinker. It makes my plan easier to execute. My name is Laura. I'm 47, and I'm a children's book illustrator. This is the story of how I rebuilt my life while watching theirs crumble. The betrayal shouldn't have surprised me. The signs had been accumulating for years, starting when Vanessa announced her pregnancy. Owen had transformed overnight. He quit smoking because the smell bothered her. He used vacation days to drive her to medical appointments. He dismissed my concerns as jealousy. Why can't Mitchell take her? I'd asked, referring to Vanessa's husband. She says she's anxious about the checkups, Owen had snapped. I can't just let her go alone. All the more reason for Mitchell to go with her, I'd countered. When you go with her every time, it's almost like you're the father. Owen's eyes had flashed with something I couldn't identify. Jealous you're not going to get pregnant anyway? What's the problem? That had been our first real argument in 18 years of marriage. After Vanessa's daughter Lily was born, Owen spent even more time with them. When Lily turned 6, Owen announced he was attending her kindergarten graduation ceremony because Mitchell can't make it. Later, I discovered the truth during a phone call with Vanessa. Mitchell didn't even know about the ceremony. In fact, Vanessa had been hiding all school events from him while Owen played father at the kindergarten. Over the next few years, Owen and Vanessa began seeing each other more frequently. They went from once a month to 3 times a week. Then one night, Mitchell showed up at our door, his face a mask of controlled pain. "There's something you should see," he said, showing me the GPS history he'd installed in Vanessa's car. It revealed that she had been staying at a hotel 3 times a week. It was always on days she was supposedly out with Owen. "What do you want to do?" I asked, my heart hammering against my ribs as the last threads of denial snapped. "Take justice for what they've done to us," Mitchell replied, his voice steady despite the hurt in his eyes. "I can't forgive them for this betrayal. Neither can I." We started planning in secret. I focused on increasing my income while Mitchell switched to working from home. When Owen and Vanessa went out, he would bring Lily to my house and we'd care for her together. After months of suspicions about Lily's paternity, we discreetly sent a strand of her hair for DNA testing through a private lab Mitchell had contacted. We discovered the shocking truth. Lily was biologically Owen's daughter. Mitchell and I agreed to wait until she was older before taking action, not wanting to hurt an innocent child. But then I was diagnosed with a serious illness requiring long-term hospitalization. When I told Owen, his response was merely, "Period. I'll visit you once in a while." No questions about my condition, no concern, just inconvenience. In reality, he visited once a month, then once every 2 months. And after Lily's 15th birthday, even she became distant, though neither Mitchell nor I could figure out why. Until now. Owen hadn't bothered with preliminaries. No, how are you feeling? Or, we need to talk. He'd simply thrust the divorce lawyer's business card at me, Vanessa clinging to his arm, both wearing matching expressions of anticipated freedom. My calm acceptance clearly unsettled him. He'd expected tears, pleading, resistance, anything but the quiet agreement that now left him momentarily wrong-footed. After the divorce papers were filed, I immediately set my plan in motion. First, I contacted Mitchell to transfer hospitals. Then I informed my lawyer they would handle all future communications. I told Owen to dispose of my remaining belongings. I wanted nothing they had touched in my new life. Once settled in my new hospital room, my phone lit up with 30 missed calls from Owen. When I finally answered, his panic was palpable. "What the hell is going on?" Owen shouted, a real estate agent's voice audible in the background alongside Vanessa's shrill protests. "What do you mean?" I replied coolly. "It's obviously about the house." "Why do we have to move out?" he demanded. "Because it's my house." Silence. Owen had completely forgotten that the house we'd lived in was a space I'd rented as my workspace when I started freelancing. He had moved in with me because he couldn't afford to live alone. He'd never paid rent or utilities, just some minimal living expenses that didn't cover the actual costs. "George and Lily suddenly disappeared, and our house is being sold. What are we going to do about our new place?" he sputtered. "I don't know, maybe stay in a business hotel for now," I suggested, turning on speakerphone as I continued working on an illustration. "Don't screw with me," Owen yelled, then remembering something, switched to a soothing tone. "Well, whatever. When will you transfer the money? We're running low on cash." "What are you talking about?" "Don't mess around. I told you to pay $11,000, didn't I?" "I don't recall agreeing to that," I responded calmly. His incoherent screaming filled the hospital room. Apparently, he'd been counting on getting money from me and had been spending recklessly. Even with $11,000, how did he plan to survive the rest of the month? "Anyway, we're basically strangers now, so please don't contact me anymore. You'll hear from my lawyer," I said cheerfully. "Lawyer? Hey, wait up!" I hung up without letting him finish. He tried calling back several times, but I ignored him until the calls eventually stopped. Not surprisingly, he also began ignoring calls from my lawyer. A few months later, during a temporary discharge from the hospital, I visited Owen's parents' home. I had called them ahead of time to explain the situation, and they had insisted I come over. When I arrived, Owen and Vanessa were already there, looking small and trembling under his father's stern gaze. "Telling my parents is a low blow," Owen muttered. "I just reported that we got divorced," I replied, earning another glare from Owen. I had always maintained a close relationship with my in-laws, often visiting them even when Owen wasn't around. It felt wrong not to share the details of our divorce. "Is it true you're remarrying Vanessa?" Owen's father asked, his voice tight with disapproval. "Yes, it's true," Owen confirmed. "Vanessa, Lily, and I are going to start over as a family." "What are you talking about? Your only family is Laura," his father said. "She's not my family anymore," Owen replied, making his father frown deeply. Owen handed me a piece of paper, a bill from a nearby luxury hotel. "It's the bill from the hotel we stayed at," he explained, as if it justified everything. His mother gasped. "I didn't raise you to be like this." Owen and Vanessa looked genuinely confused by the reaction. "Why are you so angry?" Vanessa asked. "It's just that the family is changing because I'm getting married. Plus, you'll have a grandchild, a blood-related one. Aren't you happy?" My mother-in-law looked at me in disbelief. She knew I hadn't wanted children, but had always treated me as her daughter regardless. "You do want Lily, right?" Vanessa pressed. "It'll be your grandchild, so you'll be happy, right? It's because she's a child I've known since she was little, but half of her blood is from Owen." "Enough already. It's disgusting." Lily, who had been silently playing with her phone in the corner, finally spoke up. "My dad is the only one I consider my father, whether we're related by blood or not. He's the only one." "But you know Owen has always been the one to attend your school events," Vanessa protested. I heard everything from Dad, Lily continued, her voice steady. How he was always informed of event dates after they were over, how eventually even the events themselves were kept from him. But Dad always said I was his daughter, so I am his daughter, and I will never be yours. She glared at Vanessa, then sat beside me, her tone softening. You know, when I found out about this, I thought you would hate me, but Dad said that wasn't the case, so I came here today. I later learned that Mitchell had discovered Owen's school involvement through text messages on Lily's phone when she was younger, messages that mentioned Owen being at events Mitchell knew nothing about. Lily, I love you so much, I assured her. You were so kind to visit me every day while I was in the hospital. I was really happy. She hugged me tightly, tears welling in her eyes. Speaking of which, Vanessa, weren't you curious why I wasn't surprised when I found out Lily is Owen's daughter? Before Vanessa could respond, Mitchell entered the room. I had texted him our location earlier, asking him to join us with any evidence he had. We knew from the start, 10 years ago, actually. Vanessa paled. Oh, and unfortunately, you're not divorced yet, Mitchell added, addressing Owen. The divorce papers are still here. Didn't you notice? Apparently, neither Owen nor Vanessa had bothered to confirm the status of their respective divorces. So Vanessa is still my wife, and Lily is still my daughter, Mitchell stated firmly. Well, not for long, though. What do you mean? A 15-year-old can choose their parent, Vanessa protested. Lily wants to be with me, right? Lily frowned, gripping my hand tighter. Vanessa was speechless. Owen burst into laughter. So that's what it is. You two are together. But too bad. Isn't it impossible to live on Mitchell's salary alone? Can you stop making weird assumptions? I interjected. Also, it seems Mitchell earns double what you think. Vanessa knows about it. It's probably a bluff, Owen scoffed. Besides, it's impossible for you to work while dealing with your illness. You'll just die miserably somewhere. I laughed at his massive misunderstanding. You didn't know about my income, did you? It's probably just a bit more than a part-time job, he sneered. No, it's different. My annual income is $500,000. Owen's eyes and mouth widened in shock. Vanessa stood frozen beside him. In fact, over the past 10 years, I've become a popular children's book author, and my income has skyrocketed from essays, interviews, and the like. Moreover, a film adaptation is planned soon, so my earnings continue to grow. Liar, Owen whispered. I showed Vanessa my bank account screen, which clearly displayed large monthly deposits. She was speechless. Laura, let's, make up, Owen suggested suddenly. What are you saying? Vanessa hissed, furious at his transparent greed. Well, if you want to get married, feel free, I said calmly. Oh, and I'll definitely take the compensation for damages. Ignoring Owen's protests, I took Lily's hand and after saying goodbye to my in-laws, left the house. Owen, who had worked at his father's company, was fired when it was revealed he had been lying about sales calls. His father arranged for him to work on a friend's fishing boat. It was brutal work for someone who preferred indoor comforts. He contacted me several times, but each time I notified my father-in-law and eventually the calls stopped. Vanessa lost custody to Mitchell and was divorced. She seemed uninterested in Owen once he couldn't afford luxuries and didn't pursue him. Disowned by her family, she lived alone in a rundown apartment. Having never worked since marriage and always relying on others, she struggled to find full-time employment. Working multiple part-time jobs, she barely covered her living expenses and child support. Our divorce was finalized 6 months after my hospital confrontation with Owen. I received a substantial settlement due to his infidelity and the financial deception he had attempted. After entering high school, Lily worked diligently towards studying abroad at a prestigious university. Her dream is to translate my picture books and share them with children worldwide, which fills me with pride. As for me, my books continue to sell well, with increasing offers for animated adaptations and merchandise. My health is improving, and my doctor recently said I might leave the hospital next year. And one more thing. Mitchell and Lily visit me every day. Mitchell recently proposed to me. After careful consideration, I've decided to accept his proposal. We've signed papers to purchase a house together where we'll live once I'm discharged from the hospital, with Lily joining us during her school breaks. While building this new chapter of my life, I work on my picture books daily, weaving stories for a future that now holds promise again. Before you go, here's a quick bonus for sticking around. If you love learning and growing like I do, you need to try audiobooks. I've got an exclusive deal with Audible. Your first month is completely free. That's access to over 500,000 titles. Zero cost to you. All the details are waiting in the description. Don't miss this one.